Welcome, my dear friends. Welcome to a special interview to promote a very special cause. And we have with us our dear friend, Marinos Anagnostopoulos. And of course, I'm Stephen Clements. And we're going to be talking about charity boxing match and talking to one of the pugilist specialists that's involved, that handsome fella on the other side of the screen there, Marino. Marino, welcome onto the show. It's good to have you. Thank you for doing what you're doing and for that great short story you gave us.
Oh, it was my pleasure, and everyone loved it. You did an amazing job.
Yeah, and the only people who haven't loved it are people who haven't heard it yet. That's the thing. It's really good. It was a lot of fun to record. So, Marino,
I'm happy to do that.
tell us about Eastside Boxing Club and the Eastside Fight Night, that Aprons for Gloves group. How did you get involved? Fill us in on it.
I tore my knee a long time ago, and I couldn't play other sports, so I got into boxing, which requires a lot of knee work, ironically. But
you planned that out really well, huh?
I know, but it's easy on your joints, it's easy on your muscles, and I would play soccer, I would get injured, and other martial arts hard on my legs, and I'm always working on my feet, right? So I found this to just fit in, and I really enjoy a sport where there's a lot of psychological aspect to it while you're playing chess and someone's punching you in the face. So the best of worlds, right?
True story. Ultimately about dominating the other person, right? And some of that you don't need your fist for. The fists help, but
no, exactly. You need your brain with him. And Eastside had the restaurant Rumble, and as a restaurant owner, I was like, hell, let's do this. Let's have some fun, and really enjoyed it. I like raising money, holding fundraisers, different fun events, and then there's a fight, and then I was doing fight after fight after fight, and I'm now, like, after COVID, there was a break, and I got back into it. This might be my last year. I'm not sure yet. I might just do little ones later on occasion, but planning to go into tennis after, so we'll see. I've been saying that for years.
listen, George Foreman boxed well into his 50s, and now and then Evander Holyfield gets back out there. Okay, so don't you give up on us, because I watched your last match. You did a good job. It was a joy to watch.
Thank you. My last match should have technically not happened. I fist pumped a ceiling fan while partying at one of my fundraiser events. And my friend, who's a doctor, wrote a note to get me in, and it got me in. But it was a good match, and people really enjoyed it. So I'm happy it still went through.
We did enjoy it. Just make sure it's perfectly clear. Marinos is so dedicated to this charity fundraising boxing match. Last year, I believe it was last year, went in there with a broken hand and still fought and still did a great job.
Yes. Yeah, you can say that. I mean, it was.
Well, I can say that. I saw it. I didn't have to live it. You lived it.
So what this program does is, we've pretty much, the charity is for a kids boxing club on the rough part of our town here in Vancouver, and gets the kids off the streets and into boxing, which requires discipline, and it builds up their self-esteem. And there's evidence of this thing actually working out, because one of these kids is growing up. He's a coach now, and I made him a business partner on our upcoming landscaping company. I'm going to landscaping as well. So I'm actually going to business with one of these kids, which is wonderful. So it actually does make a difference. It's not like give your money away, you don't know where it's going, or it gets pissed away somewhere. There's actual evidence of this making a change in different people's lives.
Well, good. And I doubt that you'd be entrusting this kind of graduates of this program with money and responsibility if you didn't believe that they were going to be a good steward of it, that they did learn the important parts of the lessons that the club had impart.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can see the results.
That's fantastic. So this is a shindig put together so restaurant owners can beat the crap out of each other. And so what's the name of your restaurant in Vancouver, Canada?
Simpatico restaurant. It's been there for 54 years. So it's one of the oldest restaurants in the city.
Wow.
And we're still keeping it. Yeah.
So if people swing by it, what is the best thing they can order off the menu? In your opinion, what does Marino enjoy the most off the menu?
Our most popular dish is pizza, because we're the first place to have whole wheat crust in Vancouver. And then we got best pizza in Canada in a bunch of magazines in the 80s and 90s. So I would say that it's like old school traditional Greek pizza. But then there's like one thing I invented. It's called meat and bread. It's just marinated lamb bread, which is wonderful. Try it. I just want to take credit for that. That's why I put it.
Yeah, he is humble, by the way. If you ever visit his Facebook and all the Speedo pictures of Marino up there. It's all in the spirit of humility, just giving the glory to God that God gave him a perfect physique. So the short story that you shared with me to make the video for the gift for the goddess, one that's one of yours I hadn't read before because I've been lucky enough to read, I think, about 3 of yours prior to this. And I've been poking you to put them out there for people to check out. And so it was an honor that you gave one of those to me to put out first. So appreciate that. But what got you into writing?
Actually, a woman, to tell you the truth.
Women are
And
great for inspiration.
yeah, they are. They're the most inspiring things men have. And she was complaining about work life. There was an incident there, and I tried to help her. And she was complaining about how hard it is for women in the corporate world. So then I wrote that story that you read, actually, Zaira, about how like men seem to dominate everything, but then women come and just make them their pets. You remember that one? Maybe we should
Yeah.
do that one, right? And
Oh, yeah. If you'll let me, I will. Yeah.
of course, yeah. And then the funny thing is, the way I described that character was based on her, like how beautiful she is and how she drives men nuts. And everyone thought in that story that I was kind of the guy that gets away with his girlfriend, kind of like the side character that was kind of like Chad. It's like, no, I'm one of the idiots that's like under the level.
Yeah.
And I told
Yeah.
her, yeah, at first she didn't like, she's like, you made me a villain. I'm like, yeah, but like, I'm also the moron. Like I'm the guy. And
And
that's what made me feel. And it's true. Like that's when I first saw her, I was like, wow, like, they perform these magic spells on us sometimes. And she had done that to me.
for those who
Yeah.
haven't been lucky enough yet to read more of Marino's work, from what I've seen, it's mostly sword and sandal or sword and sorcery kind of stuff. So think Conan or Solomon Kane. And the short story is describing here and the role of the woman in it. It's very much a tale of bewitching. It does speak to something about feminine power that a lot of people ignore, that women have
Absolutely.
always had power. It's whether
Yes.
they used it or not. It's a good one. Y'all should look forward to it. So a woman got you into writing. So what inspired you to write this story specifically, The Gift for the Goddess?
Okay, so after that, I kept writing more and more. It became a hobby over COVID, and I was reading a lot at the time as well. I always read a lot, and especially history. And there's a place in where I'm from in Greece called Kalamata. The town square is named Aristomenes, right? And no one really knows much about this guy because there's not many sources on him. I always kind of knew about him, and my sister took me to Ithome, which is like a fortress town. He was besieged by the Spartans there, and just a magical place, right? So I just kept studying more and more about it. And then when I saw this specific story about him, I was like, this is insane. It's the biggest troll in like ancient history, right? Like, because the Spartans are known to be, these invincible warriors and all this stuff, and this guy just pummeled the crap out of them. Took like what a shield that one of their warriors dropped was running away, took it to the city, snuck in and put it in their temple and signed his name and said, "You dropped this," and brought it back.
And especially for the warrior culture at the time, that is the biggest slap in the face because one, you dropped your shield, and two,
Yeah.
an enemy brought it back to you. That is awesome. So what you portrayed was as true to reality as we know it to be.
Yes, and some people question whether this guy was a real historical figure or he was just made up because there was nationalism. When the Messenians freed themselves from the Spartans, some historians say they created a myth about their identity. Kind of like the Macedonians they're not Macedonian, but Scopians, whatever you want to call them, made a myth about their identity being descendants of Alexander the Great, but they're Slavic. But they still created this thing to unite them and have some national pride, which is absolutely nonsensical when you come from the Polish region of Europe, right?
Well, and like the Romans with Aeneas, the refugee from Troy, that they claim descent from him, even though there's not really any evidence of that. So yeah, myth making is very important.
There is a connection between the Etruscans and the people that lived in Anatolia. So, but there's no evidence of Aeneas. But it could be true or not, right? He could have been some warlord that brought a colony there. But there is exactly. I know what you're saying, and it's It's kind of similar with this. I think this is a lot more believable. The first phalanx battle art is based on the Messenians fighting the Spartans, actually. And there's a meme of, might have seen it, of some guy trying to put on his helmet and rush to the battle. So, and they make memes out of that one. I believe it's true. And I believe that they did mess with each other back then. Like this specific story, I believe something of the sort might have happened. It might not even have been him, but they would play psychological warfare on each other, doing things like this, right? Like little pranks to demoralize the enemy. And this was quite the prank. Right?
Yeah,
There's so
and
many.
it was quite a feat
Sorry,
of
go on.
daring do, which you tease in the story as to he promises that he's going to do. And by all means, if you haven't listened to the audio version of the story yet, do that, then come back and check this out because there's going to be little spoilers here. He promised that Aristomenes that he was going to do great things. There's going to be great feats from him in the future. And then I'm pretty sure, well, you don't name him specifically, the person who delivers that shield was him in a kind of terrorist guerrilla infiltration event. I really like that. And a lot of people, they think about ancient Greeks and they think about bald guys in togas talking about philosophy and math, but they leave out a possibly more important part of their culture, at least from my reading, is this very dynamic warrior culture, kind of self-supremacist approach to each other and especially to other cultures. These were warriors. They kicked butt all over the place. And when there was relatively fewer Greeks versus a lot of non-Greeks, the Greeks would usually be able to whip the other folks because of their discipline, their tenacity, their physical strength. This was a dynamic warrior culture, and I think a lot of people don't give them the credit for that.
The Greeks did have a warrior culture. And they fought as units versus a lot of other groups like the Celts that fought as individuals, which made all the difference. And they had the phalanx, which required all of them to work together, right? I mean, it has its ups and downs, but it had more of its ups. And that's shown in the results of their warfare. There's a book, it's called The Bronze Lie, and it talks about how the Spartans were not as superior as everyone says. It was more propaganda by the Athenians. He wrote this book. He's a leftist, and he wrote it to like kind of crush the right wing glorifying of the Spartans. That part was really stupid. He was trying to connect it to like Trump supporters, but the only thing he connected it to was Steve Bannon's passwords was Sparta. It's like, okay.
That's desperation.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid, but he should have focused on Hitler. So the Spartans were, before the 60s, before that 300 movie, they were kind of looked down upon by the West as like kind of tyrants. They had a slave class that was owned by the state.
Yeah,
so
the Helots.
The Helots. The state owned the means of production. So the Spartans eventually, they defeated the Lacedaemonians, which is a surrounding area. And then they defeated the Messenians eventually, and they turned both these groups most of them into Helots. There was urban groups that were semi-free, or they were and there were merchants and artisans and whatever. So the Helots were peasantry, which they terrorized. Hitler, he racialized this and said the Spartans were Aryans and other ones were like non-Aryan Greeks. It was just nonsense, right? And like this blonde, blue-eyed Spartans conquered everyone, did this, and he wanted to do this with Poland. Turn the Polacks and the Ukrainians and the Russians in the East into a serf class. So because of this, the West kind of like looked down on the Spartans. But then the 300 movie made them kind of like the freedom lovers against the Persian communists at the time. And then the next 300 movie in the 2000s made them kind of like the Europeans versus the Islamic terrorists, right? Which again, it's kind of nonsense. If you compare the people at that time, the Persians were more humanitarily moral, more humanist, I should say. They're like,
yeah, if you had to be ruled by any empire, the pre-Islamic Persians, you would have it pretty good. So long as you obeyed the King of Kings, he respected your culture.
Of course. The Spartans were not good, though. They weren't good to themselves in general, right? It was a brutal for everyone. It was like a militant communist state, right?
This is militarized state with slavery and in state-enforced pedophilia and just death penalty for all kinds of things. I would not want to be a Spartan. No. Not at any point. It doesn't seem like a good deal. Whereas being ruled by the King of Kings, who would respect your culture so long as once a year you send him some tribute, okay, that's a pretty good deal. Well, like one of my short stories, Daniel and the Dragon, is about the prophet Daniel, and part of it involves his relationship with the Persian king, who some sources say they were friendly.
You know what? I wouldn't mind reading that if you can send that over to me after.
Yeah, that's in the beginning, a short story collection by Lorene Cantwell. Great person. Is there anything else about the history of this short story that we want to get to our listeners? I'm already impressed that this is one as historically accurate a story as we can get, given the loss of records and things that just didn't get written down over time, and that you made it entertaining too. Because a lot of people, they think history is boring. But if you actually take the time to think about how this went down, you're like, holy crap, this was for real. I got to tell this story.
Yeah, well, there are a few things I can tell you about the Spartans. This is where they started to change and become. Before they were not this strict militant socialist state. They actually had art and stuff, but then they had to change because of they had a giant Hella population they had to control. The book that I told you about, that he lists all the battles. That guy that was a little bit leftist, he discards the fact that women had property rights, which kind of brought down the Spartan Empire because the Spartans can only inherit property rights if they're Spartan fighting males, right? They're kind of like the knightly class. So the men would die, but the women wouldn't. So then there's all the property went to the women, and there weren't enough Spartan knights at the end, right? This guy just dismissed this as a sexist thing and ignored it, which is completely idiotic. I mean, these things happen in history.
Yeah, because how else are you going to support your fighting class if the resources keep getting eaten up and concentrated in the hands of people who aren't fighting?
Yeah, and then they started bringing Helots and turning them into Spartans. That's happened too a lot actually.
And
As
that's
for
not good.
well, I mean, the loyalty's kind of, you know, but then the Aristophanes himself, he was a womanizer. There's a lot of stories where he'd get caught, and then he'd woo like one of the females that would be bringing him food or something or guarding over him, and then she'd release him. And there's another story where he won a battle against the Spartans. He was chasing the king. He was about to capture the king, but someone threw a javelin at his butt, right? And
Ow.
So there's some humor there. He eventually lost a battle. He was betrayed by his allies, the Arcadian king. Once the Messenians completely lost, a lot of them fled, and they built colonies all over the Greek world. There's some in Italy, including Messina, which takes the name. It's a big city in Italy right now. And Reggio, and then there's like they went to Cyrene and North Africa. They dispersed. Later on, under the brilliant general Epaminondas of Thebes, who had a sacred band of lover couples, male lover couples, that is. He beat the crap out of Spartans, and the Messenians came with him, and he gave them their freedom, and the Spartans were never the same after because they did not have that the resources from that fertile valley. In between, there's a lot of Messenians fought in the Peloponnesian War with the Athenians, and they were the first ones to make the Spartans surrender at Pylos in a battle with the Athenians against the Spartans, which was like, it shook the Greek world when the Spartans surrendered. As for Aristophanes, at the end, he fled to Arcadia with some troops, and when the Spartans were pillaging Messenia, he was planning to go to Sparta and attack them, because their country was empty of warriors. Arcadian king betrayed them again, so then he brought him before the Arcadians, and they stoned the king to death. So that would make a good story, kind of like some intrigue. If I'm to write more about Aristophanes, I can make a little series maybe.
Yeah, I'd read it.
And then he fled to Rhodes and lived there for the rest of his life and with his family. There's also a weird story about him. There's little like adventures where he goes to retrieve his shield, which has an eagle on it. It's a famous shield from the Oracle. There's another one where he gets thrown into a ditch with his men that get captured, and he survives, and a fox helps him escape the ditch. There's a lot of little tales about him. There's a really strange one where the Spartans catch him and kill him and take out his heart, and there's hair on him. He's a hairy heart. I don't know what that means, but I think that's a Spartan tale. I think it comes from them to make him kind of look like a monster, like kind of demonize him, because he was our terrorist back then for them, right? He didn't them.
Yeah, they would have all the reason in the world to not like him and to make him look bad. You know, him getting a javelin thrown at his butt and the vicissitudes of all the things he had to go through reminds me that these historical figures, their lives can be complicated, messy, interesting, all that same stuff. The general Pyrrhus of Epirus used to go terrorize the Romans, and I think his last campaign, he was attacking a neighbor, and an old lady on a rooftop threw a shingle, hit him in the head, took out this great warlord.
You know? all of the Macedonians, all of Greece. He terrorized the Spartans. the Carthaginians, the Romans, like all the major powers,
Yep.
gets put out by an old lady with like a tile or something. It's that
Yeah.
these
History
things
is,
happen.
yeah, they do. History is interesting. And I'm glad that you took this time to make a short, sweet, violent, to the point dramatization of it, because it's a lot of fun. Now,
Yeah. Yep.
back to the boxing match. So you've told us about the Eastside Boxing Club, the Eastside Fight Night with the Aprons for Gloves charity group. And so what can we do? How do we participate? How do we watch? How do we get money to this very worthy group that's raised, seems like, over $1 million, over $100,000 a year? So this is a very popular charity fundraising event. How can we be involved?
Okay, so this is probably the biggest boxing event in Vancouver, I think. It's the most popular one. And you give money through all the people that fight. We have our charity links. You can share it below, and people just donate to the charity link, and everyone has to raise $2,000, right? And there's a lot of guys that are former fighters are still raising money for this. I think I will continue doing it regardless if I'm fighting or not. It's fun, and I have fun events. Last night, actually, I roasted a pig. Brought all these. It was a global group and all these Eastern Europeans. Global Group is a big restaurant company in Vancouver. They came over and I presented a pig on a pig's head on a big plate, so with meats and stuff, and it's actually delicious. It was amazing, and I gave them all the beer they wanted. Just donate what you want. I had put in the money before. I raised $1,500 in 27 hours. A lot of it was mine, but it was prepaid from them. So I can't take the credit 100% for my 27-hour miracle. But yeah, everyone does different things. They do sales, big sales. Some guys do like all kinds of things to raise money. I'm actually surprised I raised so much money in such a short time period.
Yeah, I've
And I'm
seen
very
your Facebook where you've been thanking people for donating this, donating that. Since you
yeah,
announced it, what, yesterday morning?
yeah,
Less than 24 hours, and you're already so close to your $2,000 goal.
yeah.
But just because you hit $2,000 in your fundraising
Oh,
goal,
of
that doesn't mean people can't keep contributing, right?
course, yeah, yeah.
Good,
And
good.
I have a lot of money from last night that I haven't put in yet too.
Oh,
So
well.
we're not done. Like I did prepay for some of them, but they overpaid. Like they paid more. So they love the thing and they love donating to this thing. So my numbers are going to go up more today and throughout the whole, like until the fight day. I think I might, hopefully I'll reach 3,000. I hope so. Right, that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, it
I
would.
said, I've seen the results and I love the program. I love the event. I think it's excellent. People, my sister and her friends watch me in Greece when I fight. They can see it all around the world, right? It's done very professionally.
The production
Uh,
value is really good. Like, it's
yeah,
indistinguishable from any other professional fight I've seen.
yeah. Actually, I'm gonna admit this. I used to go to bars. I used to tell the girls like, "This is me in Vegas." I'd show them the video.
Oh, beware the Greeks and their wiles, huh?
Exactly. It was my Trojan.
Did it work?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And of course, we're going to put the links for Marino and his particular part of the charity fundraising event in the description, as well as in the outro card. And we're also going to include links to the Eastside Boxing Club and the Aprons for Gloves site, which has a number of dates on it, key events that are happening on individual dates. So if you're interested in finding out more about how this is going, this isn't just a one-night event.
No.
There's a bunch of different events that lead up to the fight night. And so you can find details about that at their website. So, Marino, is there anything else we need to know before we let you get back to a very busy day?
Two things. I hear they're going to do a construction boxing thing. So there's going to be the construction companies are going to start beating each other up, and I think that's going to happen in the winter. I'm looking forward to watching that. Right, so they keep doing more and more events, not just this one. The other thing is, if anyone wants to read more on Aristomenes, I have some sources. There's Pausanias here, and then there's this book by Daniel Ogden about him, and there's another one that is very good. That guy that was very biased. It's called The Bronze Lie. Maybe we can put those underneath if anyone
Sure.
wants. And that one was an excellent source because it goes into details of every single Spartan battle in its history. And Aristomenes is part of these, right? So yeah,
Now,
we can
wait, are
put.
you suggesting that even though you disagree with the political point of view of the author, you're still encouraging people to read his work because it has merit other than just his opinion?
Absolutely. Yes, I am. Yeah, I am. He has done an excellent job on describing every single battle. Like, and it's fun to read. Yeah, it's just it's an encyclopedia of Spartan battles, which are awesome. And they've actually lost. He shows that they've lost more battles than they've won. But it doesn't mean that they're bad fighters at all. The ones they won, they were mostly outnumbered, right? Or they were generally outnumbered a lot of times. Like they've pulled some spectacular maneuvers throughout their military history. He's just trying to show that a lot of it was propaganda. A lot of the other Greek city-states were just as powerful. Like the Athenians had equivalents to the Spartans, and the Thebans had probably the toughest in my opinion.
Yeah, up
They
until
would eat
Alexander took him out.
until that happened. Yeah, yeah. But the Macedonians kind of copied the Thebans and built up on their strategies. Yeah, he has all that stuff, and if you can ignore all the political nonsense, he's done an exceptional historical work, which I really enjoyed.
And that's a good lesson for people to learn, that even if you don't agree with everything someone has to say, you might get some value out of other things they have to say. And just like these kids you're talking about with the outreach programs, the youth program and the mentoring program, the leadership program, it gives them instruction, and a lot of behavior problems amongst young people, especially young men, may be linked to physical inactivity. And so they got all this energy and they have no healthy way to direct it, but this gives them a good way to direct it, so they can learn from those people from the gym as well and do productive things with their energy. So learning, keep doing it, people. It's good stuff. Well, as we said, all the links, the donation link for Marino, so you can cheer him on as he gets in the ring to no doubt succeed and to triumph over his opponent. Those will be in the description below, as well as the outro card. Well, Marino, appreciate your time, sir, and good luck in the fight.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.